Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to EIG's second in a series of guest panel webinars focused on financial investment of ERP, warehouse management systems, Internet of Things, digital twins, any technology that you have, and a systems integration into your production warehouse to enable your scalability and growth. We have our excellent guest panelists, Josh Chananie, partner in charge of distribution and manufacturing at SAC LLP, John Cosgrove from Atlantic Handling Systems, and Dani Kaplan from SMC Data. We appreciate you taking the time today to attend today's webinar, and you can have access to our free webinars of over 100 webinars up on our website at consultingeig.com. And most importantly, we hope that your family are healthy and safe. This is the second in a series of webinars that we'll be doing with guest panelists. And we'll be having another webinar in June, date to be determined, looking at it from a CIO perspective. We have upcoming webinars from the former CEO of the Material Handling Institute of America, and then applying digital twins in production warehouse, and then close out the series with the perspective of CFO. So those are our upcoming webinars. Again, we look forward to you entering questions into the chat. Feel free to enter into the Q&A or chat, and also the PollEV.com that we displayed previously, which is PollEV.com, Jim DeVries 073, and it's also in the chat. Joining us today, again, is our cross-section of expertise in production warehousing, from financial investments to supply chain automation and ERP solutions. First, John Cosgrove, president of Atlantic Handling Systems. He's held many leadership positions, from the district governor of the Rotary District 7490, president of Material Handling Equipment Distributors Association, and Fair Lawn Town Mayor. John, a few words of introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Just to tell you a little bit about myself personally, I've done all those things. I did 5 terms as the mayor of Fair Lawn, currently serving as the district governor of Rotary, which is the world's largest service organization for northern New Jersey. I've been a volunteer for over 40 years. I served as a fire chief, but the best title I have currently is I'm a grandfather of 3 beautiful grandchildren.
Awesome, John. And Josh is a partner at SACS LLP and leader of the firm's consumer products practice, concentrating on advising clients in key areas and to drive their success. He's over 15 years of experience, and he is a certified CPA in New Jersey, and he likes to spend spare time with his family, playing golf and watching football and on the beach, right, Josh?
Thank you, Jim. I need a bio like John's. I mean, I don't even,
yeah, where do you go from
second
there?
fiddle to him. It's very impressive. But looking forward to the webinar today. Like you said, Jim, 20 years in the industry, and looking forward to provide that expertise to everybody.
Thanks. I'll just say go Giants to help you out.
That's right. Appreciate that.
I'm on that team there, Josh.
And then we have Dani Kaplan, trusted ERP advisor, representing the 21st century business ERP solutions. Dani likes to do a lot of different things. He's an author, photographer. Of course, he loves dogs for sure. And he has done a lot of things, from camping to really done it all. Dani, a few words introduction.
My background is consulting, going back for the past 50 years. In 85, I'm executive regarding the software distribution DMAS. I work as a trusted advisor, and my other life beside the business, I published 4 books, and photography. The background you see, the photograph I took.
Nice, Dani. Beautiful photography. A little bit about myself. My core belief is that success starts at the front lines and getting the best out of your employees. I'm also like to travel quite a bit. My wife is from Singapore, so we hop over to Singapore and Asia and quite often, and love to travel. So that's a little bit about myself. For today's webinar, we are addressing a lot of different deliverables today. We'll be looking at the challenges of integrating production warehouse automation, gaining insights of knowing when to justify that automation, when to stay or when to go, as you'll see in a few minutes. We'll be optimizing your current future warehouse facility layout with automation, and how to capitalize on technology like ERPs, Internet of Things, automation, and maybe throw in a few words about digital twins, since that's a hot topic out there. We have some case studies for simplifying production and warehouse operations. So those are our deliverables. With that, a little bit of overview of our partners. Atlantic Handling Systems. John?
Yeah, Atlantic Handling Systems started it 20 years ago with my partner, John Mayberry. Mayberry Material Handling is a large material handling company out of Massachusetts. So together, the Mayberry Atlantic team forms one of the largest material handling companies in the Northeast. What we do is we go in and we try to guide our clients. It's just very much like these webinars. If you notice last webinar, we talked about real estate. Today, we're going to talk about finance. We're trying to help people so that they can improve the function and productivity of their warehouse. And, we do that through Dani's ERP, through our automation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that throughout the webinar. But what we do essentially is we're systems integrators. We will come in and help you to try to achieve increased productivity, which will increase your bottom line.
Thanks, John. With that, Josh, a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So as Jim mentioned in the beginning, I'm a partner at Saks. I've been here for 20 years. I run the firm's manufacturing and distribution practice. I also sit as a member of the firm's executive committee. So Saks has been in business for 67 years. We only work with family-owned, privately held, small to medium-sized businesses. And you'll tell based on a lot of the statistics that are on the screen that we take a very holistic approach to service. We do that not only by offering more than accounting and tax inside the operation, but bringing these valued and trusted advisors outside the business to help clients maximize potential, realize their goals, is a big part of what we do. And I do have I'm very thankful to have worked with John and Dani for many years, and we're going to add a lot of value today. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, Josh. With that, Dani?
I represent VAI Supply Chain Software, ERP software. It's a single database software of manufacturer distribution food, and that translates to a manufacturer by a distributor by a manufacturer. And this food could be both manufacturer and distributor without having multiple ERP software. A main issue today in today's market is people buy standalone warehouse software, which is all integration issue and inaccurate inventory. I wrote an article in LinkedIn about how to buy software and implement it, which has over 3,000 people that viewed it and 14 reposts, and I think you'll find interesting.
Thanks, Dani. Very impressive. With that, just a little bit about Enhance International Group. We're a group of 50 plus consulting companies, and SaaS providers, and we act as a Swiss Army knife, as a master integrator to drive overall productivity of your company. Today, we're talking about facility infrastructure, and we want to help you from a restructuring and reinvest. We have partners. Of course, we have great partners here. We also have other partners can help fill out other areas from HR to digital twins. We look at things from a people, process, data, technology perspective, and we look at partners that help in your strategy for your company and execution. So our partners are all split across those two wheels of strategy and execution. With that, we'll go into the agenda today. First, we'll go into the challenges as knowing when to move, expand, or automate your facility. We'll have a roundtable discussion on that. Then we'll get into the state of the business as far as all the IoT, Internet of Things, ERP, MRP, digital twins, and any other acronym you can think of as far as automating your workplace. Then you'll get into how to make your account, how to take into account when upgrading your production warehouse facility. Josh will take us through that. And then we'll get into some best practices and case studies. So when you come out of this, we're hoping you're going to come out with lots of ideas and best practices. And please keep those questions flowing throughout. With that, we'll get into the challenges. And as we said, we had an opening question of what are your challenges to invest in automating and integrating systems in your productions? And we can already see, thank you for entering in resources to make changes, capital investment, lack of funds, space constraints. So thanks for entering that in. And we'll be getting to those type of questions throughout. So I'm going to just move on and we're going to reacquaint this, keep putting them in. And with that, between what you saw there, guys, and challenges to thrive and not just survive, as we talked about, from scalability, technological integration, finding the right partners. John, you want to kick us off on some of your initial thoughts? You're on mute.
Yeah.
One of my initial thoughts is that in my 45 years of experience, I've been through enough downturns, and then we come back up, and I hear expressions like I have to get to the other side of the river. And that's where, you really need to collaborate. Someone like Josh can lead you through the financial part. I was with a group of bankers yesterday and they were talking about interest rates. So we find that a lot of people are holding off on projects because of interest rates. It's sticker shock between inflation and the interest rates they've been holding off. But in my experience, this is the time now when you can take a look at these things, retool, get yourself ready. And when you do get to the other side of the river, you're ready, because it always comes back up. And when it does, you have to be ready to do that. So it just might be something as simple on my end as retooling a certain process. It might be returns, it might be your picking, your receiving, whatever it is. You don't have to go in and do a complete whole gigantic makeover. You can go out and there's critical impact factors that can make you more productive now that are really going to help you when you move forward. And that's where Dani on the ERP and WMS side really help, because that provides the intelligence. And, I think you have to, you're a CPA or someone like Josh, they're your trusted advisors. They have to tell you what you can afford. And, the whole thing today with, if you had told me 2 years ago when steel was going through the roof that people would pay the prices they were paying then, and they would wait 36 weeks for delivery and be happy, I would have told you it never would happen, but it did. And now they're slowly coming back to normal. But I don't know if you're ever going to, maybe Josh, you can comment on this. I don't know if you're ever going to see those 3% interest rates or 2.5% again.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem that way, John. I think, there's a lot of questions out there. We'll see how the election plays into that as well. But you're right. I think those are days of the past. And I think from a banking perspective, I think that's why you see so much hesitation of people to refinance and move, because they're moving from an environment of potentially a lower interest rate to a higher interest rate. But, kind of going back to even, kind of where you started, I think we live in such a complicated world today that you have to build the right team around you, right? And I go right to that, finding the right partners for growth, because there's no way that you have everything you need inside that head, you know, to grow. I think we've always talked about constantly evolving and growing, and you can't do that on your own, right? So I think this is the reason why you have to build that team. You have to associate yourself with with the right people. And then, you know, look, the other side of this is, look, I want to scale. The questions that come with scale are how am I going to afford it? How am I going to finance it? We're going to talk about that. And how do I do it with the talent I have? Because maybe they're aging out, maybe there's not enough. And I think the biggest uncertainty around all of this is technology and how that's impacting my business today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So yeah, lot.
Yeah, I think maybe Jim can talk to that AI part of it. That's the big,
Yeah.
it's
I
definitely
think,
coming.
yeah, I think one thing that we kind of lose sight of, and high interest rates are there. They're not coming down. But if we look at it from a return on investment perspective in the investment in artificial intelligence, there are more true and tried investments in AI, as you mentioned, and there's some that are more chancy, so to speak. And I think I'm guessing this is a question for Josh, is how do you look at portfolios, look at infrastructure of a facility, this, help them, lead them through that, because I'm very confident with John and Danny's and the rest of the EIG partners are giving ROIs of 6 months to 8 months. Even with an higher interest rate, you're still going to be able to get your return on investment. And in this time when you need to reduce your cost per widget, whatever you're making, or and increase your throughput, that's what counts. That's where I'm having, Josh, maybe you can help out and add some clarity there for us.
Yeah, and I think Jim, I think it starts and ends with good data, right? You're not able to make any of these decisions unless you have solid numbers and you really understand your KPIs. It's one thing to know, where you want to take the business, but can you afford it? And I think that is, that's going to speak directly to what Dani is talking about. But I
Absolutely.
think, but I think it starts and ends with how reliable is the information that's coming out of your system as it relates to the costing of your products, your overhead. It's amazing how many people we work with that still kind of fly by the seat of their pants. And they manage the business based on the cash in the bank. And that's not always their fault, right? Because a lot of times they're in the business because they know how to make the product, but everything else they're, always looking for answers on. So I think the timing is now where you have to get your hands around that, or, business becomes much, much harder.
Hey, Dani,
Yeah.
why don't you
Yeah.
speak to the interruption if you don't have the same ERP and WMS, talking about good numbers?
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest issue people are facing today. Trying to control the inventory, knowing what you have available in inventory after you allocate for production and future orders. In today's reality, they decide to buy a warehouse software, which is trying to take a Mercedes engine and Audi transmission, put it together, so to speak. Integration issues. If you have multiple software modules, you're talking about multiple support. AT&T blame Verizon, Verizon plays T-Mobile, and T-Mobile plays God. So in the meantime, your business suffers. You must have a single database software that has ERP, warehouse management, analytic, financial, and very accurate data. As just said, without having accurate data, you're really playing a Russian roulette with your business.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. And this whole idea of demand volatility and forecasting, we do live in an uncertain world, as you said, Dani, and having an ERP, MRP, and WMS, it's all integrated, no matter how many different warehouses you have. So you can have one moment of truth with your VAI system really provides that centralized data source. And with Cognos on top, it really helps quite a bit. Dani, any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, the IBM Cognos Analytic, it's a very powerful analytic that is built into the VAI software, will translate to all the data is in English. So you can pick up any field you want to and cut and paste any way you want to. A good example is bed, bath, and beyond. If your customer sales drop by 30% all of a sudden, check how old is the receivable. They might have financial problems. You have to, or what region buys what time. Florida buys in the winter air condition, Northeast buys heaters. So the analytics software have enable the end user cut and paste anything you need to, putting pieces together.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So I think, Jim, when you look at this specific slide, you talk a lot about e-commerce, and what's really happened here, to quote a great friend of mine and Josh, who passed about 3 or 4 months ago, Sandy Vosk, he called e-commerce a tsunami. And that's what's happened in the industry. Amazon has raised the bar. You can no longer compete with you can't compete in a world where people are used to getting product within 24 to 48 hours, and you can't ship and you can't do those things. So if you're not doing that now, it's either change or die. You're going to have to take a look at your operation and do those things. So I think the e-commerce part has really changed the whole supply chain.
Yeah, and I think, John, I think the whole concept of evolve or die now translates to, and it says it right on the bottom, and I agree with it 100%. Should I stay or should I go? I mean, we've seen tremendous market consolidation over the last 4 years, whether it be businesses going out or you have tremendous PE or strategic partner acquisition, that's happening. I mean, you look at about a month ago, you had SRS being purchased by Home Depot. There's a lot of money out there, and there's so much information and skill, and we touched on it on the last 2 slides, that if you're not addressing all of these things, then maybe the best decision is to step aside and let somebody else take the reins. So, especially in a business like mine, where we're dealing with multi-generation, a tremendous amount of transition happening right now, family owned, privately held, there's life-changing money that's at stake. And there's a lot of options that you have to weigh. So, in the end, that is the decision that's on the tip of the tongue of a lot of people and businesses that have been in business for 100 years. And, I would never sell that business. Those are the businesses that are being sold.
Josh and I had a perfect example of that. We went into a company, second generation was in the company, but the father was still there. He wanted to continue to do things the way they did in 1985, and they didn't make it. We gave them the options. The younger members of the family were ready to do it, but he wouldn't relinquish that power, and they ended up going under.
Yeah, I think this is going to be, we're on the onset of, with these high interest rates, people holding out right now, but we're on the onset of quite a bit of turmoil, I expect, in the market. Josh, can you speak to that, what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the point before. I think you're seeing a lot of outside investment because people are so concerned about putting their own capital at risk that they're relying on, the financial wherewithal of others. And by doing that, people are giving up ownership percentages. They're giving up control. And again, it's a matter of survival. Or on the flip side, you can look at it as the potential for growth. So again, I think a lot of it is about preservation personally, but is there the opportunity still for growth in the business? So yeah, it's really interesting. It's really challenging time.
Yeah, I guess my question is, with the paradigms you know, we make so many units, or we have so many units go through here with such and such a productivity. The thought of stepping up that productivity in losing the human element that made that company, that family business, the family business, those are hard decisions, I imagine, for these folks to make.
Yeah, there's such a concern over a change in culture, right? And what
Yeah.
that looks like. It wasn't, it's no longer my parents' company or my grandparents' company. But there's still ways to achieve that growth that you're looking for, and not lose some of that morals and that the company was built on. But the environment is changing, and the business today does not look like I look at my own business. The business today is not what it was a year ago, 2 years ago. You have to look at it as an opportunity to change the culture and make it better and develop new people and develop new opportunities. I sit today in a firm where 50% of my people are here less than 2 years, right?
Mm.
So you're talking about a firm that's undergone tremendous growth over the last 5 years and looks completely different than it did, 20 years ago when I walked through those doors. But there's something about change that's made us successful simultaneously.
Yeah, it's as you said, change or die. We're in that world. So with that, I'm just going to move on to the next area. We have a lot to talk about. Just a little bit on the state of technology that's out there. What Dani and John talked about earlier is this whole idea of an integrated platform with your ERP, your WMS, your order management system, the e-commerce coming through there, the warehouse control system, and of course, some kind of transportation management system. This is the environment that is often split between multiple providers, and having this all on a single platform with VAI, I think it's a really powerful approach to getting you going. Dani, your thoughts?
One of the main issues companies face is not having integrated software, which means you have separate module running, trying to put them together. And it basically creates a headache. A bigger issue is when you have an M&A and you have multiple ERP software. You have multiple warehouses, the multiple computers don't talk to each other. One warehouse is overstock, other warehouse is understock. The understock buys more, while the other has too much inventory. Another issue is what people try to do now, buy standalone warehouse software and warehouse e-commerce and standalone e-commerce. Once you start with multiple modules, you start with multiple vendors. And now we're talking about multiple support. And when one of the vendors has an upgrade, the whole pyramid falls apart. And then finger pointing on each other, it's not my fault. In the meantime, the business suffers. So having a full integrated software is essential to move forward. We have clients who achieve $1 million. One of them achieved $1 million ROI in a year. And second one achieved it with a full distributor, $1 million ROI in 2.5 years. And inventory accuracy, 99.9 accuracy. That's a huge issue today in today's reality of supply chain.
Thanks, Dani. And just to build on this, we just looked at the Internet of Things, and it's growing at a 25% CAGR growth rate. We have ERP still growing at 8%, and material requirements planning, your S&OP, supplier inventory and operations planning, that area is growing, and the digital twin, which is now sitting on top of MRPs to optimize overall using AI neural networks, is growing at the same size as MRPs at a 30, but a very much higher growth rate. So there's a lot of activity out there, a lot of vendors out there in this space, but having that centralized ERP, there aren't I don't think there's many vendors that offer what VAI offers across this entire space.
So Jim, the great part about the VAI WMS is that it provides the intelligence for my integration. You know, it tells me what size boxes, it tells me where to divert things, it tells me all of these things. So as we move down the road ahead, when you take the VAI software and WMS, and now with AI is going to be very big. It's going to be a huge contribution to distribution and supply chain.
Absolutely. Josh, what are you saying?
Yeah, I see, you know, going back to the whole, you know, should I stay or should I go? How do I increase the value of my company? This is it. It's the ability to create data. It's the ability for integration. This is where these big PE firms are spending a tremendous amount of time doing due diligence, and it could be a deal breaker as to whether a deal goes through or not, because there's a tremendous reliance and emphasis on technology, and absent this, you're really putting your company at risk. So again, when you talk about maximizing value, this is one of the key areas of focus that these firms are looking at.
So Josh, you're talking about the merger and acquisition part, right?
100%. So obviously we talked before about the internal benefit of having good data and of having real, you know, it's good time data and real time data, because that's the catalyst for growth and for streamlining operations, but also from a value maximization standpoint, you know, it sends the message that you have your act together to, you know, to the universe out there.
Yeah, the real-time and predictive part of being able to predict exactly what you need, when you need it, and if you don't have it, it's not just if you predicting to make sure you have it, it's knowing what to do when you don't have it. And knowing what to do next. And that, I think that's the real power of a digital twin, is it actually instructs you on what to do next, all the way to the person on the shop floor.
Another important issue is the cloud. By having the cloud, you have multiple location, real-time information. One case study, Sid Harvey in Long Island, that had 100 locations nationwide, and each location had a server and uploaded the data at nighttime. If it failed, the next morning they have to redo it. That results in the company never having good information what the real-time information is, data is. At this point, 100% cloud, 100 location on the cloud, real-time information, you know what every region buys, what the customer buys, how much inventory in each location. It's important factor to have the information of every warehouse location, because if one is overstocked and the other one is understocked, just change your save it with the common carrier for the warehouse that has it.
Excellent. So just a picture of what we're talking about for everybody is on the shop floor, you have all your equipment, CNC machines, and your SCADA data that's on the floor, and getting it to talk to the ERP. This is a busy slide, understand, but you know, being able to store that, that's what VAI does very nice, and integrates it into the cloud, as Dani just said, into centralized data marks. So Cognos, the cloud, or VAI, makes it real time. The advantage of then throwing on top of the digital twin, it's actually feeding back into and giving you work instructions. So that's when we say, that's what we were trying to explain as far as the real-time digital twin. So being able to make this an ecosystem of collecting the data, feeding it back in real time for real-time decisions, and adjusting your workflows accordingly is the direction that everybody's going in now. Any other additional comments, Dani, on this?
Yeah, the real-time information is essential, because you need to have up-to-the-minute information. You can't afford not to have it. A good example is vendor delivery. By being able to use the Cognos analytic and know what the level vendor past delivery information, you know whom to buy from. Prior to Corvette, the cheapest vendor was the best vendor. Today is a different story. Delivery reliability, late delivery create production disruption, order cancellation, and excess inventory. So now we're talking about real-time information across the board, what to have in inventory, what to buy, how much to buy, and whom to buy, which is a very important factor.
Thanks, Danny. Josh, any additional comments?
No, I think Danny said it well.
John, you good?
Yeah, you know, the only thing is when all of these things happen the right way, when I get it, it helps me to make your warehouse more productive.
Absolutely. With that, we're going to move to Josh's section that he'll lead here on the factors that to take into account when upgrading your facility. Josh?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So a lot of this stuff we kind of talked about, but we're going to go a little more in depth. So, you know, we're talking about scalability, right? This idea that the business has to continue to evolve because stagnancy will put you out of business, right? So I always want to say, how do I grow the top line, right? And a big part of that is increasing your customer base, right? So that's expanding geographic locations. We talked a lot before about e-commerce, right? E-commerce opens you up to the world. And if you haven't embraced it yet, then, you know, it's very important you do that. You know, partnerships as well. We talked about that before. It's important to have a network. I think you need to be able to have people who you can go to help you push your product, whether that's wholesale, whether that's direct to retail. I think you have to evaluate all opportunities, right? We talk about expanding your product offerings. There's still tremendous opportunity from a credits and incentive standpoint to undergo research and development, right? You have to continue to add value to the products, especially today when consumers are so cost conscious and they want to know, you know, what's the return? What am I getting? You know, and there's a tremendous amount of price shopping and comparison. So you have to invest as a business owner in constantly making your product better. Enter new markets. Again, we talked about e-commerce, physical location too. I think, you know, retail is not dead. It's been struggling, but I think there still is, you know, people still want to support business. I think that hasn't changed. And not everyone in this world has a computer or, you know, does all their shopping or buying via the internet. So I think physical is not dead. It just has to be in the right location. And then, you know, another opportunity is through acquisition, right? We talked about companies doing really, really well, but there are companies that are struggling as well. And they don't have to be struggling, but, you know, the opportunity to grow, you know, whether that's being able to offer similar products, additional products, people acquire to get buying capacity with the manufacturer. All those things have to be weighed, but, you know, acquisition is one of the ways that we grow. It's one of the ways that John grows, one of the ways that Danny's firm grows as well. So I think acquisition has to be on the table. It may be the most cost prohibited, but in the end, it may actually add the most impact to your operations. So obviously, when we talk about growth, it's a scary thing, right? The first thing people think of is cash, right? Where's it going to come from? It costs money to grow the business, right? So, you know, what does cash flow consist of? Well, it consists of the cash you have on hand. We talked a little bit before about traditional debt, right? That's going to your banks, your Capital One, Bank of America, Provident, you know, whoever it may be, traditional lending. We know that market can be challenging at times, especially if your numbers are not all where they need to be. But mezzanine debt as well, right? So there are mezzanine lenders out there that may put you in that 12, 13, 14% range. But again, it's still valuable. And then obviously the private equity world, who is still has a tremendous amount of cash available and are looking to make, increase investment in. Certainly maintaining quality standards. Again, going back to what, we said before, people want a quality product, and if you're just growing for the sake of growing and your quality is dipping simultaneously, then you're going to lose business. The next two kind of go hand in hand, right? Handle increased customer demands. You need good technology in order to be able to do that. A lot of these orders, a lot of these deals come in through EDI these days. So you have to have the technology in order to be able to receive those orders, and you need to have that information in order to be able to determine staffing, product, material needs. So again, I think the underlying thing here in this whole thing is you need good data in order to be able to make the right business decisions. Capacity management, especially in New Jersey, there's always a concern about, I'm running out of space. Where does it go? Where do I buy? Do I go to South Carolina? Do I go to Pennsylvania? So there is so you always need to weigh the risk of whether you do it yourself or you go to a 3PL, of which is a tremendously growing business in this world as well. The next piece here is, I think, often overlooked, is that the government's not always bad. There is opportunities to reduce your taxes through hiring, through research and development. So it is important that you consult your advisor, especially in this growth phase, that you're taking advantage of everything that's available to you from a tax credits and incentive program. I know we do have a good program here in New Jersey. Again, often overlooked. But nonetheless, important to tap into. And then, the last piece is, this whole, should I stay or should I go? Do I divest myself of the whole business, or maybe there's a product line or two that we're operating and that's not increasing our value to the business? And again, it goes back to good data to really understand our divisions and our products and whether or not they're profitable or not. So
Josh, we do have a question.
yeah.
Is, how do you factor in the financial impact of your energy demand and in the efficiencies of energy?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think it goes back to the overall, if you're constructing from the ground up, do you consider solar? I think John could even probably speak more to that. Again, whether or not it's driven by automation or it's driven by people. John, when you're starting a warehouse from scratch, or when you're going into a situation of rebuild, how much does the energy requirement kind of factor into what you do?
Well, what happens is we work with some people who go in and they consult, and they turn around and they'll talk to them about solar. They'll talk about what their energy uses will be, how much energy they'll need. And then they go out to market and they'll actually make it competitive. And I have people that I know who do that. So if anyone is interested in that, please contact me. And, it works. It's an up and coming thing, and energy is really, it's a big overhead, and it's a thing that you really need to bring it, just like we were talking about bringing in people for, ERP, WMS, automation, financial. You also need that consideration on what you're going to do as far as the power requirements for your warehouse.
And also your electrical and distribution of your warehouse.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The longer you wait, the longer you wait to put in your electrical, the more it costs you. So
and also
you really got to figure that out.
The longer, and when you're building a new building, a lot of times what happens is, to get the power takes longer now, and sometimes they construct the warehouses and they have to wait.
Yeah.
And it's, some of the power companies make you wait a long time. So you really have to get a handle on that, especially if you're doing a project right out of the ground.
Yeah, if you're moving from production, or moving from a warehouse to production, your power requirements are going to change dramatically.
Of course, especially in food.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to take that into account when you're buying a building and in the investment there. That can hurt you pretty badly if you're not
Right.
prepared.
Right.
Right.
Josh?
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, so again, staying on the topic of scaling, it's how do I mitigate the risk, right? Obviously, we take tremendous financial risk whenever we look to grow a business or potentially go into an unknown, right? So, you know, one of the things we always talk about is diversification of revenue streams and customers, right? You never put all your eggs in one basket. And I think one of the benefits we have today is we're able to do real due diligence on our customers. So especially if we're going to jump right in and do very large projects, I think we need to be smart about the people who we do business with, right? If anything is, we've experienced people taking longer times to pay, and longer times to pay create cash bottlenecks, which means more lending, which means higher interest. So it all rolls downhill. So I think we have to be smart about who we're doing business with and how much, and it's okay to put caps on relationships. Investing in the right technology, you know, technology can really be your friend today. I think, you know, if you look back years ago, there was a lot of hesitation. Now, you know, I think the script is completely flipped on this. So, you know, John and Dani, they live in that tech world. It's extremely important to the growth of business and in terms of protection, right? So we talk about cybersecurity. It's one thing to have good data. It's another thing to keep it safe. And what happens if it's breached or we lose access to it? And what does that do to the business? You know, again, a general misconception here is that, you know, cyber is covered under your general insurance, and it's not. It's a whole nother, you know, it's a whole nother piece that has to really be considered. We kind of talked about, you know, the next couple points there, and maybe John, maybe you want to talk about, you know, and Dani, a lot of times people see technology as big cost exposure, right? And how do you suggest somebody build a ramp up strategy, or how do you dip your toe in the water to be effective so that you can embrace what's in front of you, but not handcuff the company simultaneously?
It's what we talked about before. You know, you don't have to jump into a fully automated system. You know, there are things you can do that will improve and increase your productivity as you go along, and you can build on those things. You know, one of the things that people often ask us is if they're going to move, should they implement like Dani's ERP and WMS and a whole new warehouse system together? And I always recommend that they implement the ERP and WMS first, because once they get that down, they can turn around and then apply our automation to help them. You know, and today, you know, Josh, you're seeing a lot of, you know, robotics. You're seeing automated guided vehicles, you know, where instead of the picker serpentining through a warehouse, now we're bringing the goods to the picker, or we're bringing the cart to the picker, where they just can then pick, and it increases productivity, you know, threefold. And I've talked about this in other webinars. What we're seeing now is, because of the labor shortage and the cost of labor, we're going more and more to the European models of automation.
Right.
So that's driving the costs down here on that also. So, and you're going to see more and more of it. And in Europe, you know, people get 8 weeks vacation, and they can't find people to work in warehouse type applications. So the same thing is happening here, as far as they just can't find people to work.
Yeah, and I think to that point, that's why the last bullet point is so important as well, is that you're right, we do have less and less people. So how do we keep them here? How do we create a career for them? And what does their own professional development and growth look like from inside the company? So, you know, people, at least, you know, you want to believe people are good and they want to grow, and we have to feed into that, and there's a cost to that. because we have to still realize that even though we're embracing technology and it's so important, we still only go as far as our people do. So, look, there's obviously a lot of cost to personnel, and most businesses, it's the number one, expense. But we have to consider their own growth in the job that they do and in them embracing technology, right? Because we're not just going to invest in technology and it's going to run on its own and that's it. And we're going to achieve 2, 3 times, 4 times ROI. It still needs to be run by people. And then the last thing, again, just going back to everything that we've talked about today, you've got to surround yourself with the right people and the right partnerships and the right expertise, because you can't go at it alone.
Yeah. This is a really great dialogue. I just wanted to cover one slide here. John, you want to take off on this slide for us?
Yeah, it's a little bit what we talked about in our last seminar, which was involving real estate. If you take a look at that picture, you see all the wasted height in real estate. And, one of the greatest ways to get a bigger return on investment is to use the cube in your warehouse. So what we've done, we'll go higher, and it can increase your picks per hour with a pick module and conveyor systems. And of course, that's a great segue to get to Dani, because all of those things needs Dani's WMS to help me give you maximum productivity.
Dani?
When we talk about WMS and labor issues, we're facing with 2 issues. Number one is automating the warehouse, and number one, getting labor to work in the warehouse. One of the options is mobile capability, smartphones. By using smartphone, it costs $400 instead of $3,000 gun. There is no training involved. So when you get labor, it's quite affordable issue. Second thing is first implementation, but having the right training. Each department get an expert that tell them you've done business for 30 years, but it's a new world today, and that's what we have seen. And having the whole integration, which is a huge issue, but not having total integration, you depend on multiple vendors and multiple support, and then multiple finger pointing. So having the whole thing together is a major issue now.
Thanks, Dani. And then from a total integration perspective, from a business operations and aligned productivity to that real-time visibility and execution, that financial investment Josh has been speaking about is critical to accelerate your performance. Josh?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to planning, right? This isn't something that you just jump into, but you ramp up into. And I think, you have to do your due diligence on what's right for you. I think it's important that you speak to, your competition and the businesses and understand what they're doing in their own worlds. And then that's how you create alignment, right? I think you've got to match the right technology with your needs, your ability to afford it, and what's going to produce the right output that you need based on your own capabilities internally. So again, it's not just something that you can just, jump right into.
Thanks, Josh. With that, we're going to get to some case studies. Kicking it off with John.
Yeah, okay. This is a major cosmetic company, health and beauty aids. What they've done is they were shipping to mass merchandisers, big box stores. And the problem is they apply what we call a UCC 128, which is the label they use for shipping that has a barcode on it. So their clients would find them if the barcode was not placed in the right place. So what they were doing is they were bringing in 30 temporary employees every year when their season would start for the holidays. They would start in like August, and they would bring in these 30 employees, and they would do about 700 cases a day, because they have to take them off a pallet, put them back on a pallet, apply the label. So what happened was we came in and put a conveyor system in with some print and apply application. And so we got up to almost 5,000 a day. So what it does, it was a tremendous savings for them. It increased their capacity. They went to 81,000 cases were shipped in September alone without any temporary employees. They had no overtime and less stress for their employees. Once we put the label on, we read it with a photo eye. And if it wasn't in the right place or if the barcode was wrong, we would send it down a reject lane where the manager could check it. If it was okay, we'd send it to a sorter. And you can see here some pictures. We'd load it onto a conveyor. We'd take it in. Once we got it into this room where they had to print and apply, they would apply the labels. You'll see there's 2 print and apply applicators there. When you have to change the labels out, we can continue to keep going. The barcode scanner reads it. And if any problems were found, we send it down the reject lane, and then all cases were sent down, and then they were diverted down and sorted and put on a pallet. And we did this all with an ergonomic lift table, which eliminated back problems. That table goes up and down. So when they load it, the pallet, they don't have to bend all the way down. So it was a huge savings. And for Shiseido, it was the project of the year worldwide.
Nice. Nice, John. And Josh?
Yeah, so a common issue we see a lot is that again, it all goes back to bad data and companies just overproducing, right? They're overproducing SKUs because they don't have good benchmarks to know, what products are needed when for which customers. And so in order to keep their people busy, they just say, hey, you go out there, I'd rather pay you to build something than to just sit around and do nothing. So company was producing all of a sudden, so that they were sitting on a lot of inventory that wasn't moving. It was tying up cash flow because they were borrowing to bring in materials. And it's very simple to come in and do an analysis and understand what products are needed when, so that your cash is not tied up, because as we know, cash is vital, right? It's the lifeline of the company. It enables us to do all this additional investment that, we've talked about now. So, again, it's important to go through this consistently, understand your products, understand your customers, understand what the needs are. And lean on, you could certainly lean on your accountant to do this. They're the ones that see the numbers. They're the ones that are closest to the numbers. And sometimes they're the ones with the most objective view because they're not in the day-to-day like you are. So that's why we're here. You lean on us for something like that.
Thanks, Josh. Great story. Dani?
This is a typical case of having multiple ERP systems. It's a case study of a very large car distributor, fancy cars. They have multiple systems, integration issues, multiple vendor, finger pointing, and headaches. They were growing very quickly, and they have no integration. And the problem is that manufacturer and distribution do not communicate with each other, which result in material shortage or over excess inventory. And then it affects the financial also. By having single database software by VAI resolve all those issues. They were able to get the result that they need without having multiple vendor and multiple software.
Nice. Great story, Dani. Thank you. With that, we're going to move to this. What are some financial impacts on investing, making good investments? And we'll start off with you, John, from left to right.
Okay. What happens is we can increase your workforce efficiency. Many of the solutions that we provide, like in picking, we can get you to a 99.9% accuracy with pick to light or put to light. We increase your productivity, which we make it easier for your employees as far as they don't have to walk as far around. And, we can do those things. Accuracy improve, higher throughput. The higher throughput means increased productivity and puts more money to the bottom line for you. And space utilization, it's what we talked about in the last webinar. If we can use your cube and your height and let you do more in less space, you're going to, of course, increase your ROI is going to be typically like within 1 year.
Nice. Dani?
It's an issue is that reducing the cost is a major issue. You have to have better inventory control to manage your cash flow. Receivable is another issue, and the integration is the most important issue. Multiple location warehouse, if you don't have integrated system, one warehouse is overstocked and the other warehouse is understocked. The understocked buys more inventory, but the overstock has more than inventory should. If you have a real-time software over the cloud, you can ship the inventory from the overstocked warehouse via a common carrier instead of buying excess inventory. It's a huge issue now in the market where people have multiple ERP software that don't TikTok. In the M&A world, a very common problem. When you have multiple ERP software, one case study is the Romer International worldwide manufacturer distributor that bought a distributor with 3 ERP system. The finished good and inventory dropped to 70%. Today, with one single ERP system, BAI has 99.9% accuracy.
Thanks, Dani. And Josh?
Yeah, I just to reiterate kind of what I said before is that, you know, you're going to make a massive investment in whatever we do here, whether that's in the warehouse side, whether that's in the technology side. We want to make sure that we're putting the money to work correctly, that there's, you know, not only benefit from an ROI, but potentially there's a tax savings impact as well, and that the money that we're going to invest is going to enhance the overall value of the company, whether that's maximizing EBITDA or, you know, kind of evolving the company to kind of meet today's standards from a technology standpoint and efficiency output standpoint. So again, it's a big investment. You think it through and you've got to address all these things simultaneously.
Thanks, Josh. With that, hopefully you found the webinar what you were seeking and addressed the deliverables that we discussed at the beginning. And our next webinar will be coming up in June with Ben Allen, CIO, on applying AI in production warehouse environment. And we hope you will join us there. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We enjoyed the webinar. Thank you for your inputs throughout the webinar to keep it lively here. And with that, some closing comments, John?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. I thought that this was a very good session, and I hope that it can help people to make these tough decisions that they have to make concerning their businesses.
Thanks. And Josh?
Yeah, I think it goes back to power in numbers, right? I think it's surrounding yourself with the right people. I have the benefit of surrounding myself with the good guys on this call, and the power that comes from you know, all those years of knowledge inside the industry creates power.
Nicely said. Dani?
I hope you found the webinar informative, especially the fact that you need integration between multiple software, which is essential today. Otherwise, you have a go around talking to vendors and having lack of support.
Thanks, Dani. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope we found it informative. The one key takeaway for me is, you know, should you stay or should you go? I would say you should understand where you're at so you know where you're going. Don't wait. And don't be scared of high interest rates. The ROI is still there, and it's better to act now than wait till later. So thanks so much for joining us, and you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.